AI is not the death of the human worker. It actually is the enhancement of the human worker. I was asked this question: when are we going to stop changing? When are we going to stop transforming? And I said, well, I don't think we are.
Earl Newsome, welcome to Solar for CIO.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to sit here and chat a bit about the soul of the CIO. I love the title, by the way.
Why'd you love it?
I love it because actually I'm a closet DJ, right?
Nice.
So my hobby, I used to DJ in college. I've actually DJed in a few little spots. I've DJed for events.
Are you suggesting a parallelism, between the CIO role and the DJ role, or do you see them as utterly distinct?
I think there's a parallelism, right? Because I think if you're a CIO and you can move the company, there's a certain rhythm and a beat to technology, right? And so if you can capture that rhythm and the beat of technology, and especially as it connects with humans, right, you can actually change the world. I'm a big believer that I guess one of the concepts is that we move from installation to realization of benefits through adoption and utilization, right? And so, the installation of a piece of technology, just getting the green light on, right? But getting people to use and adopt it, to move with it, right? That's where benefits realization comes from.
Yeah.
So if you have that soul, if you have that beat, and the technologies you implement actually is adopted and utilized by the people that it's intended to, you can achieve great outcomes.
What are the proverbial records you got to spin to get that interaction, to get that beat going? How does installation become adoption, become success?
I think the first album you have to play, right, in order to drive adoption is really understand your target audience, right? What beat, right? If you're a DJ and you observe your audience, right, you don't want to play, the wrong music, to the audience, because they're gonna all look at you like you're crazy, right? So the first thing to do to drive adoption, right, is to play music that they like. Right. And so I think if you can create technology that people like, you're going to get great adoption, right?
You made me think as well, what's the worst kind of DJ? It's the DJ who wants to impose their tastes on the venue, on the dance floor, on the people. That would also be like the bad CIO, right?
Well, absolutely.
Imposing poor technology choices regardless of response, regardless of...
You got to play music I like, not music you like, right? And so I think the same thing applies to the CIO. The CIO who brings technology to the business that the business doesn't like will fail. Right? And so if you're not playing music that the business likes, you're going to suffer as a CIO. And so you need to find the music that the business likes and play that music for them.
One of the things you said, I almost wanted to debate you on it, if that's too aggressive, is like the notion of IT having become in recent years the cool kids. They've gone from being the kids in the basement, the kind of the nerds, the geeks,
right.
to the cool kids, right? Talk to me about that transition. Talk to me what you meant by that, and talk to me about the what that means for IT at large and CIOs in particular.
Well, I think that comes from, and I go back to kind of Mark Andreessen's kind of comment that says software's eating the world, right? And so as software eats the world, things become more driven by software. In fact, the value differentiation for most businesses are going to be through software. In fact, people are now starting to use that term. We're a software company in the business of doing X.
How did this impact the role of the CIO, the leader in this, of the cool kids in particular, do you think?
I think it changes the way that you as an IT leader have to operate and think. And so, because you're now required to think about how IT can differentiate your product versus just service it, right? And so when IT becomes a differentiator, right, then that means the CIO has to be a different CIO. You can no longer be a person worried about keeping the lights on. You've got to now be thinking about how do I differentiate my product. In fact, I was told this, and me and another guy who was a CTO for a company. We talked about this particular thing about why should a CIO or a CTO be fired? Well, a CIO or a CTO should be fired if they miss a trend that fundamentally changes our industry, and we missed it. The person who missed digital camera, at Kodak, should have been fired.
Good example.
The person who missed MP3 at Sony should have been fired. So I think this idea that if you miss a trend that's going to fundamentally change your industry, now you're no longer the keep the lights on guy. You need to be the guy or gal who's helping us anticipate the trends in software that are going to change our industry and help us be first movers to that trend.
What presently would be in most danger of missing if you're a CIO at the moment? What should you be super alert to?
So this one is AI, right? And I think we're asking the wrong questions about AI, by the way, and I'll go into a little bit of that. But this idea is that the person who wins AI in their industry wins their industry. So this is a fundamental shift in the way that we think about technology, and a fundamental shift in the way that we deliver value from software. So AI is going to be a value differentiator for you, right? So you need to figure that out in your industry, how AI is going to change and transform your industry. So you're the one that wins your industry. I say AI is not coming for your job, but the person using AI is. So why don't you create a future with you in it using AI that's indispensable? This is the trend that you can't miss is AI. The other thing I would say about AI that I think we're getting wrong, and people are quoting this MIT, thing that says 95% of AI projects have failed. And I say that's actually good, right? Because, the idea is we are in the early stages of AI. A 5 to 10% success ratio on an innovation project is actually considered pretty good. So if you change that around, as we've figured out 95% of the time, how not to use AI in our industry, right?
Yeah.
It's like the famous, Edison quote, I've determined 99,000 ways how not to make a light bulb, right?
Yeah.
We've got to start thinking about AI that way. Do rapid experimentation, exploration, let 1,000 flowers bloom. You'll find out the ones that bloom, go harvest those and turn those into the bouquet that your business will use. And so that's the way I actually think about it. And we've done that, is to let 1,000 flowers bloom. And then I call the folks that are working on my AI group is florist. And so they're going out there and I want them to find the beautiful flowers, harvest those beautiful flowers, turn them into a bouquet, and bring that bouquet to our company to let us think about, these are the flowers that bloom, and these are the ones that are going to help us transform our industry.
How are you determining which of those flowers are blooming, however? And do you feel that CIOs presently have the insight, the data that they need to determine value in AI investment?
Again, I think that's the wrong question, right? Um, it's like asking, is there value in spell check? So it's not a question about, does AI have value or not? The question is have I have the right application of AI to win my industry?
Yeah.
So change the question to that, and that way, and if you change your question to that, then you go have those experiments. You have 1 in 10 be successful, and that one is going to be the one that makes you the next unicorn. So that's the thing that you should go do.
You mentioned that, okay, like the CIO, like the individual employee, they have to be ready to embrace change in this specific area. And the person who holds back is a person who becomes potentially, their job becomes potentially imperiled, right? But of course, the difference is the CIO has to inspire change en masse. They have to inspire the individual employees of their organization. They have to empower them. So it brings us back as well to the notion of the DJ whose role is to inspire those individuals. How should the CIO go about that process, and what record should they be playing with AI in particular to get people moving?
To me, a good leader has what I call 360-degree leadership, right? And this is strategic leadership, technical leadership, and tactical leadership, right? Are the three elements I think of great leaders, right? And I think great CIOs should have this as well. And strategic leadership is knowing which hill to attack, right? I was in the military, so I use the military vernacular and kind of talk a bit about strategic leadership. And so knowing which hill to attack, what's objective to go after in the corporate world, right? Tactical leadership is knowing how to get to that objective safely, right? What are the steps necessary to be successful, or to take the hill, or to accomplish the objective? And technical leadership is rolling up your sleeves and helping along the way, right? And so you have to be willing to get your hands dirty, right? Then once you've determined what the right path is, then chart the course, play the record of tactics and say, how are we going to do this safely, right? I want to make sure that we accomplish our objective. And the third one is get out there and dance, right? And so get out there and dance with your folks, right? And you can inspire them. That means being a practitioner and a user of the technology. Be the first and best user of technology. I often challenge IT to be. And so I think if you're playing those three records of strategic leadership, tactical leadership, and technical leadership, you can inspire people to be all that they can be. Leadership is important, but I also think understanding your purpose is equally as important. So you need to understand what your purpose is as a CIO and as a person on this earth, right? And, in the book, True North kind of gets at this notion of purpose. And my purpose is building a world without limits so people can be all they can be and deliver and create some magic along the way.
Let's go into your career a little bit, specifically, concretely, and talk to us about your current CIO role, your remit there, your achievements so far in this Cummins.
my current role, I am the CIO for Cummins, and we've got a product platform transformation. We're moving to a product operating model. We're moving to support, kind of digitization in our enterprise. We're moving to support, and we're continuing to support green energy. And so, as Cummins is focused on Destination Zero and really lowering emissions. Throughout everything that we do. And so we're committed to Destination Zero. We're committed to the people within our organization and our culture and community involvement.
Soul of the CIO is sponsored by NextThink. Now, if you work in IT, you'll know too well how disruptions can derail productivity fast. NextThink's AI-powered platform for digital employee experience keeps you ahead. It uncovers issues others can't see and resolves them automatically with employee-centric AI and always-on automation. Employees stay productive, IT stays proactive and even preventative, and leadership sees results. NextThink, ahead of every IT disruption, behind every strategy. Learn more at nextthink.com. When you think about your passage through corporate America to, the C-suite, what were the most formative, important experiences and opportunities you had on the way, do you think, that made you the leader you are?
So I was working at Owens, Illinois, and I'll say the name because he's an amazing leader. His name is Larry Griffiths, and he was the president of our plastics division. He also happened to be, serving the role of a CIO. Right, he was named the kind of the temporary CIO, and I was there as a leading implementation of a piece of software. And so I was working for Larry and as the functional technical leader of this group that was implementing software, and I was a third party external consultant. And the CEO went to Larry and said, "Larry, we really need you to focus on the plastics business. So you need to find somebody to do this IT stuff." And this was back when IT was not the cool kids. This was quick when we were doing all the plumbing stuff. Larry turned to me and said, "Hey, can you help me find somebody to be the CIO?" I said, "Sure." So I went to I went home that night and I said, "Oh, let me think about who can be that CIO." And then I said, "Wait a minute, can I be the CIO?" And so went to him the next morning and said, "Larry, I'll do it for you." And he said, "I didn't think you would do that." And so he literally took me that morning. We went up to go see the CEO, and he said, "Hey, Earl wants to do this." And they said, "Okay." And one day I went from leading the project to being the CIO of then it was a Fortune 500 company. And so that, uh, you know, that's when, the true definition of when opportunity meets preparation, right? And that was my luck. And that my first CIO gig got because I thought I could do it. I chose myself and I asked for it.
What were some of the skills and skills you had to acquire and challenges you had to overcome along the way of developing as a leader beyond that point?
I think the other skills you really need to really drive it is to become a quad deep leader. And a quad deep leader is one who's got business intelligence, industrial intelligence, emotional intelligence, and technical intelligence. And the way I think about that is business intelligence, you need to know how we make money, right? So whatever business you're in, right? How do we make money? Because businesses, need to be going concerns and you need to understand how they make money. The second thing is industrial intelligence. That is knowing how we compete and win. So how do we compete and win in the industry we choose to operate within? So you need to know the industry and you need to be not just a surface knowledge. You got to be in-depth knowledge, who our competitors are, what they're doing. Again, looking around corners, you can get fired for missing that trend, so find out where your industry is going and have that industry intelligence. And then I think you have to have emotional intelligence, knowing how people think and feel. You got to be able to connect with people, right? And then last, technical intelligence about being a master at your craft, right? And so you have to figure out those four for you, right? But continue to invest in those four on a continuing basis. And actually it becomes the more senior you get, the less it's going to be on your technical intelligence and the mastering of your craft. It's get more on business, industry, and emotional intelligence is really what's going to differentiate a great CIO or a great leader from just an average one.
Absolutely. And our sponsor, NextThink, they coined the term, as you may have heard, digital employee experience. Now it's quite a kind of buzzword among CIOs generally that we talk to. To what extent has the way that the employee has become a more central part of the CIO's vision defined the modern technology leader, do you think? And, Previously, it was just sort of deploy the technology and hope for the best a little more. Now it's centering the employee, supporting the employee. And where do you see that developing in the coming years?
One of the things I've learned in my career is everything is a people business,
Mm.
right? Didn't always know that. I learned that throughout the way. I'd say if knowledge is your capital, people are your resource, right? And so everything you do, if you grow the people, you grow your business, right? In the consulting business, and then in corporate America, it's about ensuring you're giving back and supporting the communities and the employees that operate within your company. So everything is a people business,
Mhm.
right? And I think once you realize everything is a people business and everything is just an organization of people, your family is an organization of people, your community is an organization of people, your company and country are all nothing but organizations of people. Then once you've come to that conclusion, then you realize that everything is a people business and everything is all about people. And so the most current thing as I think about the importance in the activities that we need to do with people is I was asked this question: when are we gonna stop changing, was the question. We're always transforming and, everybody's tired of transformation overload. So when are we gonna stop transforming? And I said, "Well, I don't think we are." I think what we're moving from a period of episodic change where change was measured in 5 and 10-year increments, major change, to now continuous change being pushed and fueled by VUCA, right? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity,
Mhm.
ambiguity, right? And I think we have to prepare our people to live in a world of continuous change. And so I think the current charge to management and leadership, and those who are going to be the most effective, are those people who've equipped their people, right? Because everything is a people business, to live and thrive in a world of continuous change.
Mm.
And I think those three skills that we need to give our people are this: we need to create agility, anti-fragility, and resiliency in people. Be able to respond to change, anti-fragile, not break when it occurs, and resilient, recover quickly, and be able to continue their positive trajectory as fast as they possibly can. That, if you can do that, you will not only survive, you will thrive in today's world.
How are you implementing those principles in reality presently?
Well, I think in reality, I mean, what we're doing is like part of our operating model change is really embedding agility into everything that we do. So we're training people on agility, getting them exposed to being agile. We're going to begin teaching how to be anti-fragile, which is talk about how do you respond to change and thrive in the change, right? And then resiliency, and just continuing to train and to push and educate people on resiliency. I think this is a growing area. Right? I think this is a today challenge,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a growing discipline, and it's gonna need investment and investigation and invention, to create resources that are gonna be able to survive in the future.
As we look at the coming years of AI transformation, do you think CIOs have ever, as you were saying earlier, every industry is going to be fundamentally transformed. Every
Yeah.
business is going to be defined as a success or otherwise by its ability to successfully instigate AI transformation
Mhm.
internally. Have CIOs ever had as much responsibility as this, or call it opportunity, before?
This is an unprecedented time where technology is gonna eat everything that we have to deal with, right? And so I think technologists need to be more pervasive, right? And so the CIO actually needs to become the president of technology. But I think this concept of the president of technology, because a president versus a chief, the president has a responsibility, right, for not only for operations, but for delivery and for growth, right? And so if we think about the president of technology, looking over all of our technological elements about how we're going to win in our industry, right? That's the president of technology is going to help us win with AI in our industry, right? And it could have a responsibility for P&L, could have a responsibility for customer service support, could have a responsibility for large group of employees, could have a responsibility for a large group of tech.
We were actually talking just before the interview. You just been at a couple of conferences in the Bay Area, right? And one of the things that was being discussed was the potential impact of AI on jobs and the workforce. It's a hot topic. Some people are optimistic, some people are pessimistic. What are you anticipating?
Well, that's a great question. I would say, as I think about AI and AI's impact on the workforce, I think it's going to be a net job creator. Let me tell you why. One, if you go back to Andy McAfee's book, he's called Second Machine Age. In this book, he talks about the transition from steam engines to electric motors, right? And they were, in early days, in the early 1900s, all manufacturing was done by steam engines, right? Steam motors. And when the electric motor came on, everybody thought, oh my God, what's going to happen with all these steam engineers? Well, there aren't any more steam engineers. There may be two left. They're working at the Smithsonian, right? But they all got replaced by electrical engineers. And electrical engineers actually, because electrical engines and electric motors actually democratize access to the ability to create motive force, to create manufacturing, we actually got an explosion in manufacturing jobs,
Mhm.
right? So there was an explosion of electrical engineers and electricians because of the generation of the electric motor. So I believe the same thing is going to happen with AI, and we've seen this happen throughout technology transitions over the history of technology transitions. In fact, the WF World Economic Forum predicted 90 million jobs are going to be impacted by AI, but 180 million jobs are going to be created. This concept is that we just need to figure out what that next new job is, right? So yes, there's going to be impact of AI on certain roles and certain things, but this net increase, we need to figure out what that new job is. And I submit a few new jobs we need to think about. Digital anthropology, right? We need to think about how we're going to see AI impact new jobs. It'll be creating this AI anthropologist. Digital anthropology would be another one. AI engineer, and I even have a new one called AI artists, right?
Yeah.
And so the AI artist is the one, and I've seen this done. And they're going to take multiple models, multiple capabilities, and combine it into uh, a single use, right? And they're gonna be able to take the output of one, put it into output another. They're gonna be the creatives that use multiple AI engines and models to create something new and special. And I'm gonna call those AI artists.
Nice.
And so we're gonna create a bunch of these new roles. In fact, I think this as well is that there was a book called Genius Makers. In the book, they talk about two moves: Move 37 and Move 78. So move 37, this was when the Go player was playing Deep Mine, right? And in the second game, the machine did move 37. The Go player had never seen that move before. And he lost that game. And they went back and they looked at move 37. They said, "Oh, this was ultimately predictable." The machines did 10,000 scenarios and figured out move 37. And so it got to game 4. And the Go player was getting beat again, and he got to move 78. And this is a move that the machine had never seen before and couldn't predict. And the machine went crazy. And that was the game that he won. Right. And so I am a proponent of move 37 is the domain of the machine. Move 78 is the domain of humans. And so I encourage us all to get Move 78 t-shirts, right? Because we are going to be Move 78. And so the way that we quiet, and this is one of the roles and responsibilities of the CIO, I believe. I mean, we've got to do a couple things. One is, we've got to drive the bias out of the data and algorithms because nobody else can, right? And I think we also got to quiet the crowd and say AI is not the death of the human worker. It actually is the enhancement of the human worker. And we are always going to be we're always going to be owners of Move 78, right? We'll let the machines do Move 37. We'll be Move 78. And we'll be amplified by the machines doing 37, and we'll be 78. And that's that's the future of AI. That's the future of the human worker. It's you plus AI being effective. In fact, we talked about this earlier. We said, my belief is AI is not coming for your job, but the person using AI is,
Yeah.
right? And I want you to be that person using AI.
And we need to be looking for it to elicit our greater creativity, not assume that creative response becomes redundant, right?
Right. I mean, it may actually force you to move. I mean, in this example, Move 78 was forced
Yeah.
because of the machine forced you to be creative. So it actually could be make you be more creative than you actually were.
Let's look at sort of driving inspirations, sort of extra professional or beyond technology values that you've brought to your career. What have been priorities to you in this area?
I think one of the priorities I'd like to just kind of wax on here a little bit is this notion of diversity. And then we'll go back to my music theory here is to me, the value of diversity is not in diversity itself. The value is in belonging, right? Because I think diversity is actually being invited to the dance, right? I think inclusion is being asked to dance. I think equity is having access to the dance floor, right? But belonging is wanting to dance as if no one's looking at you. Right. And so I often talk about I want to create an organization of 1,000 dancers that is dancing to the music that I'm playing in their head that they love, uh, and dancing as if no one's looking at them. If you're dancing if no one's looking at you, right? You are giving. I'm not only earning your compliant labor or your compliant behavior, I'm actually earning your discretionary effort, right? And if I can earn your discretionary effort, right, and making you feel as though that you belong, right, then I can create extraordinary outcomes, right? So to me, the value of diversity is exactly that, is getting the organization to dance as if no one's looking at them.
Got to ask you, we've spoken about the proverbial records a CIO can play to get people on the dance floor. What about as an actual DJ? What are your go-to records to get people moving in an actual dance floor?
The first go-to record is the record that they want to hear.
How'd you figure that
I
out?
figure that well, you have to observe the crowd, you can watch them, but, you can also edge them on a little bit, right? So Cupid Shuffle is always a great one, so if you can get a line dance going, right? You can get the Cupid Shuffle, that will do it. Again, it all depends on the crowd. It could be a Leonard Skinner crowd that wants to hear, Free Bird, it could be a line dancing crowd that wants to, hear Watermelon Crawl.
You need to be responsive.
Yep, that's it.
Oh, thanks so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to wax philosophical on these things.